Okay.
All right. So
Yes.
it says that we are sending this to YouTube. Okay, so we are now live on YouTube. I'm gonna share the link with Luz so that she can put it in the different groups. And let me give you a warm welcome to this first live event of Roots of Resilience. You might be here because you know that education needs a profound transformation and that it's about time that we take action. And maybe you also want to do it in community, collaborating with other people to co-create learning communities. But if you have gone through that route, you might have found that it's not so easy. Once you leave the mainstream, there are many streams, many possibilities, and it becomes difficult sometimes to reach agreements. We found ourselves used to top-down hierarchical approaches and might feel out of control in horizontal structures. We aim for autonomy, agency, responsibility in our learning and in our own lives. And at the same time, we're used to a world and school settings that invite us and sometimes even force us to be passive. And overall, we seem to be a little bit losing something that is very basic for human beings, for social animals, as we move closer and closer to an individualistic culture. There's no one solution that I can give you for all these challenges. We have been talking with the rest of the members of this webinar, this panel today, and everyone said the same. I feel a bit like I don't know the answer to these challenges, but I think that we can agree that while there's not one solution, there are many options that is worth considering. And because of this, diversity is key. And this is at the core of today's webinar, is to listen to diverse perspectives in making possible alternatives in education and learning.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit of an introduction about David and I. We completely believe that education can change the world and is a tool for social transformation. And I was always super passionate about teaching and learning. And after being completely disappointed with my training as a teacher is when David and I decided to travel around the world, researching innovative educational projects, interviewing teachers, facilitators, students, parents, like everybody that could be there, like we interview them, and to see how education could be different. So we really believe that education needs to support learners to develop as integral human beings, balanced individuals, able to listen to their needs, to follow their passions, and to be interconnected with their communities and also the environment. However, the education paradigm that we have experienced during 18 years or even more was based on coercion, was based on hierarchy and performance. And as we learned through imitation, so it was going to be really hard to envision other ways of doing things. At least that's what I found when I started teaching. It was I was trying to do things in a different way and kept repeating the same things. So it was time to learn how to do it in a different way. And that's when we started our journey, exploring and learning from many different people around the world. And what we saw changed us forever. And as soon as we started questioning education, then a lot of questions came in many other areas in our lives. And we also realized that these amazing learning communities were only available for a few people, like that were willing to try to question and to start doing things in a different way. However, the huge majority of children are inside traditional schools that most times don't allow them to fully discover who they are, who they want to be, how they learn best. So we were completely determined to democratize these practices and to share all these learnings with as many people as possible to create more sustainable futures, and not only the future, but also support people or to live a mindful present, not only thinking about how it would be next, but right now. How can we do it right now? And how can we live?
And Roots of Resilience is one of the ways in which we are approaching this and how to share this diversity of approaches and ways. And it can be a bit complicated and complex. I've got lots of questions from different people. So I made this image for today to explain where we are in this learning journey. So when you sign up, you might have received a couple of videos that help you to explore practices that improve your personal resilience through 2 videos, one connected with trauma awareness education, another one a documentary film about our own experience going through a very tough moment in our lives and how we face it with resilience. At the beginning of this week, we started looking at Summerhill School that reached more than 100 years old. And our interview with Henry Redhead, the co-principal of the school currently, when we did our research in education alternatives in the UK a couple of years back. Today, we're at this moment in the live webinar with a panel of experts on learning communities. And our next step is going to be next Saturday is the last part where we'll have an experiential workshop focused on impactful communication and how to deal with some of the challenges that the community will bring. So we're going to use some dynamics of collective intelligence, and you're going to see how we put this in practice so that we can bring the richness out of the collective experiences that people will bring to these events. And you'll get to know how to continue the learning journey beyond Roots of Resilience.
Mm-hmm. But with no further ado, let's present the speakers that we have today. First, we have Katrin Brait, and she's an expert facilitator of consent-based education from the Netherlands. And she's also experienced in the movement method and nature in learning with more than 30 years of experience in democratic schools. Thank you, Katrin.
Richard Fransham is joining us from Canada. He's a teacher and activist for children's rights. He has been working in education transformation for over 5 decades, he just told us. And his most recent endeavor is the global platform Rights-Centric Education Network.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Richard. The next one is Nelson Vilaronga. He's a community builder with extensive experience integrating theater, agro-ecology, and education from Brazil. And his project refers Integral Center for Adolescence, enable and support children, to support vulnerable youth. And he's now also contributing to intentional communities in a world tour.
And finally, Rajneesh Mathur is co-founder of Arohi Learning Community in India. He brings more than 20 years of experience enabling his learning community, and that has taken him to support children and youth through all age groups and with tons of different families that came attracted to Arohi because of their approach to open learning and schooling and how they're redesigning education. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to share this space with you. Let's jump to the first question, and please feel free to add a bit more about your context and projects as we go through them. And the first question, it's a very core one, and it's a key question that we're referring to when we talk about diversity of perspectives, people approaching alternatives in education, but how many alternatives are there? There are many, right? So this question is about alignment and growth. How to build a tribe aligned in values and actions, how to grow together, build collective consciousness, and overcome the conflicts that naturally are going to arise. Maybe, Nelson, would you like to start? You're muted.
Thank you, David. Well, I was sharing with you, my colleagues here, before we started right now, that I was reading again this, not only this first question, but all the questions. And especially this first one gave me a very interesting feeling that although I am trying each time more to connect with the present moment, and I really believe in that, this question gave me the sensation that time is passing. Because immediately I was reflecting that if I were answering to this question 15 years ago when I entered in my first community experience, or 10 years ago when I was really responsible with other people to found a community from zero, let's say, the answers coming from my deep inside space, they really changed a lot during this time, and I believe it will keep changing. So that time, I probably would be very excited about this question, and I would be talking and listening and reading and searching about the best agreements you can do, how important it is to have clear agreements when you start something like that. that you must provide yourself time to know each other, and how important it is to align expectations and to have goals in common, to have a proposal. So it's so magic, they imagine the image that you have with other people, something really in common, and this common space provides you the conditions to do something magic, to transform the patterns or to break the patterns. So, of course, I still believe that these points are very important. There are no recipes, but it's very important to have some references, to have some skills to deal with these first steps. But right now, what I really feel and deeply feel is that I don't want to be part of a bubble of happiness. Then after some years talking, sharing these expectations, these dreams, especially, I started to notice that being realistic, trying to be really realistic about the relationships, the conditions, to admit the possibility to fail, to face this situation when you don't have the answer. You just start with your group, with your partners, your neighbors, your brothers and sisters, and you say, I don't know. I just don't know. We came to a difficult point. We are having conflicts. There are ways to deal with conflicts, but right now, things are not happening how we dreamed, how we imagined. We are creative. We can try again. We can try in different forms. But this empty space to really don't know, not knowing what to do, I started to realize this space is really rich. We normally, because it's not comfortable, of course, but if we allow ourselves to stay for a while in this empty space, really not knowing what to do, and if it makes sense to go on even with these difficulties, if it makes sense to try again, to start again almost from zero. It's never from zero, but almost from zero. If the whole group changes and suddenly you need to try again to be in touch deeply with these new people and to align again the expectations with them. So knowing what you really want, and especially what you don't want to do, to live, to have. So I believe that would be my sincere answer for this question right now. Is to create more empty space, to allow more empty space to be present in our daily life, and our daily search, our daily exercise of a dream about a more creative, a more horizontal, a more true relationship with each others and with the proposal of our community.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Wow, what a strong concept of we're reaching for alignment. You already took us back to wait. Let's start with the space to not know, and to be comfortable with not knowing, and knowing that perfection doesn't exist. Thank you. Maybe Richard, would you like to share from your experiences how you have found alignment and growth?
Yes, thanks, David. I'm just putting in chat here some links that I'll refer to so that people can follow up if they want to. Nelson, you provided a perfect segue for me to say a few words on this. The Two Loops model video is something that came out in 2019. It was brought to my attention shortly after that. And I thought, that's good, but I didn't really think twice about it. And then it was brought to my attention again recently, and it had more meaning for me. It actually made a real difference in the tack that I'm taking now. And what it does is it wraps into 15 minutes of easily understood explanation of all the academic stuff that surrounded Thomas Kuhn's idea of paradigm shifts. And and puts it into a nice little package. Without that, there's no framework for establishing what the work is that we're doing. We feel scattered and stabbing around trying to find a direction. The thing that really stood out to me when it was brought to my attention again was the evolution of a paradigm shift from that period of all these scattered efforts going on where people are trying to find a way to that point. And it's not linear. It's very kind of dynamic the way it all unfolds, but that stage that they identify where this paradigm shift changes from all the fuzziness into a community of practice that's bound by some special something. And this group that has formed up, the Rights-Centric Education Network, is on that cusp of establishing what's called a community of practice built on that special something, the special something being human rights. And so it's working to pull education into alignment with human rights. And that pertains perfectly to what Luz was saying earlier about her search for a better way in education. The Rights-Centric Education Network has produced this declaration of child right-centered education. And for you to establish that you want to be part of this community of practice, you could just go to that link that I've provided there and sign up. And that's like saying, I'm in total favor of pursuing this idea of bringing education into alignment with the evolution of human rights, is the way they say it, which is a correct way to say it, because even in our best democracies around the world, there is still an awful lot of inequity and inequality. So we're just trying to implement the human rights advice of United Nations. The Learning Planet Festival is coming up in January, and what we're trying to do is get people to rally behind that. United Nations quite recently produced a report that aimed to catalyze a global conversation about education. And this Learning Planet Festival is about that, bringing people together to discuss education. We want to get this idea of pulling education into alignment with human rights very high profile there. And so we're encouraging people to do presentations there, but also to attend it and to work it, not just be there as a spectator, but to engage with people, to tell them things that you have found really meaningful, to find out what they find really meaningful and follow up on it and try to bring more people into that conversation. There's another thing that has come to our attention very recently, and it's the idea of conscious collaboration, which has been provided to us by John Jones as the person who coined that. And what it is really is, instead of the haphazard kind of collaboration that we do that never really amounts to an awful lot, this is studied or deliberate collaboration, that we start thinking of using collaboration effectively. And so there's that definition that John has provided us there. And I'll leave what I have to say at this point.
Thank you. We share the links in the YouTube comments as well, so people can have them. Who would like to continue with this question about alignment of communities?
Okay, yeah, from the very beautiful global picture that Richard, you have shared, we have looked at it in a very specific way. And what has I wouldn't say it has worked for us. I would just say that's how we have worked, right? Is that be very clear about what is the core thing. What is that one, let's say one thing or two things. What is that core thing that we are holding on to? In our case, we call it open learning, but it can be retermed as anything else. But it basically means that the child is learning whatever he or she wants to learn at whatever age. And there is nobody telling the child you should learn this. Rather, the child is deciding, I want to learn this. It could be what the child likes, or it could be child sees what looks interesting, or it's just something that the child wants to try, whatever the case may be. So now we had this one idea, and then we thought, hey, how do we develop a tribe around this? So we thought of it in the form of a football field. Meaning, Nelson, it comes very close to your space thing. That if we know that okay, we are going to work around this field where the child can do whatever he wants to do, in the sense of being able to learn whatever he or she wants to learn, and the rest people can toss the ball around, play around, create their own spaces, create space this side or that side. If you're not hung up with all the game, because somehow we realize the football isn't about the ball, it's about the field where you are in. And now you do what you do with the ball is it's all the moment changing, and that doesn't matter. So the action was less important. What was more important was this, whatever, the whole idea of that, yes, the child can lead his or her learning at different ages. Toddlers anyway do that. They lead us by what they want to do, infants and toddlers. We just had to open it up for the rest of the age groups, and then it goes. And yes, if I continue the analogy of football, yeah, players will come in, players will go. Styles will come in, styles will go. Strategies will come in, strategies will go. But the game goes on, right? and I think that's how people come in, and they also feel, let's say, uh, ease with the thought that they can go out. It's not like you have to belong, as in you have to like forever belong. You can belong for some time. You can play the game for some time and then move ahead. Which is why, in the sense of a conflict or collective, it really didn't need to do much. And now the game itself becomes the conflict ground, the collective ground, and this whole growing together, or rather not even growing. Let's not bother about growing. Let's just bother about enjoying, learning, doing things, and each one creating their own little goal, right? In terms of the football, their own goals. And so that's been our approach. And as I said, I don't know if it's worked well, but that's what we have been working throughout. And I will put it this way: we have been enjoying. There are many families, children, even groups of people who have come in, gone out, come in, gone out, and we continue to learn and enjoy and play the game with them. Yeah, let me pause here.
Thank you, Ranesh. Yeah, I think that's when it has worked for you. That's the thing. Like, as you said, everything is changing all the time. People are changing. The things that they believe or the things that they thought, once that they start experiencing, they might even change. As Nelson was saying, maybe sometimes it's like, oh, we really like this thing, and then we try it, and it's like, oh, maybe I don't like it so much. So we start experimenting and seeing things, and sometimes we realize the things that we don't like, and not so often like maybe creating that or what we want is a little bit more difficult to have it clear. But then we can start saying, okay, I don't want this, I don't want this, and then keep playing around with that idea. and I think that at the core of all that thing, I feel that there should be that trust and that willingness to, that vulnerability to say what Nelson said, I don't know. And this makes me feel uncomfortable. How are we gonna do with it? And I guess that in that part about that reflection about the play and the game is that each person has their own needs and their own doubts and their own fears, because each of us come with an experience and things that we have to deal with. So that support and that growing together is essential, and that space for making mistakes, for vulnerability, for humbleness, it's essential, and then allow us to play and to see it as a game. And those conflicts, I guess that they stop being as something that we are scared of, but something that we can learn from. And the part of conflicts links really well with the following question of challenges. No, what are the biggest challenges that you have faced to build a learning community, and what did you learn from it? Maybe Katrin, you can start in this one.
It's a very big question. um, yeah, I guess what's very important in building a community of learning community is that you get this kind of common ground together. And it doesn't have to be like you have to align the vision or your mission or everything, because that's also changing. It's you're learning so much and it changes by the week maybe. Sometimes it stays for a month and then you say, oh, I learned something completely new. And but it's more like Ratnesh said, this you have this playing field and that you like commit to this field. Okay, I stay in this field. I make my choice and I'm staying here and I'm playing this game. I don't know how maybe, and I don't know the rules, but I'm staying in this game. And I think that's a very, very important thing, that because you can't really get over conflicts if there's someone who is saying, but okay, then I'm gonna leave. No, I'm going. I'm not in there anymore. And it's also like if you watch children's play, it's like when it's get kind of, everybody gets like, but we can't play then. So you stay or you go. It's like they're really clear. And that's also the thing that helped me through also when we got into discussions a lot, that you go back to this common ground. And with us, it always was like, what do the children need? I think with education, especially for younger children, it's quite easy because you always can go back to this ground and you watch the children and you say, oh yeah, but that's what we want. So there's this alignment you can get to get over challenges, that you find this common ground together. And then like Lou said, I think the trust in the group, that you learn how to trust and that you can step back, or that you don't feel bad if you're not there at the moment when some decisions are made or something, that you just trust the group that it's going to work and that you're part of it and that you're not left out. So don't really know if I really answered the questions, but I think, yeah, maybe the biggest challenge is finding this trust, that you really trust each other and get this safe space where you can play this game together. And that you really be with all the group, like that you take care of each other. Or maybe also face this this difficult decision to help somebody to leave if they don't want anymore. Like it is okay, we have to have this difficult conversation. Like, do you really want to be here? And I guess that's the biggest challenge I faced at the school I was for more than 14 years. That you get different routes because you want different things, and people didn't really want to be at this school. So, okay,
So
I guess
also
I'll leave it with that.
accompanying the people to do that journey all together, no? So we can take the decisions that at the end works for everyone, having in mind the needs that each of us have.
Yeah,
Pranesh?
precisely, and that you don't have to have the same opinion, or you can think differently, but you have to stay in the game, because otherwise it's lost kind of, because then you don't know what you're doing. So yeah.
Thank you. Pranesh, would you like to continue?
Yeah. So I want to rephrase the question itself to make sense out of it. And I would say something like, hey, how to build a learning community around challenges. Right? Because the challenges are going to be
They
there
are going to
all
be
the
there, yeah.
time. Right? So now let's not think about what are the challenges. Let's think about how do we build it with the challenges itself as the fodder, as the main menu or the main meal, right? Or we even jokingly call it, hey, that's our curriculum. Every challenge, that's our curriculum. We literally mean it. Let me explain you or give you an example of what I mean when I say we literally mean it. So let's say there is a conflict. Let's say between X and Y within the community. And there are, in our community, there are obviously children and parents and sometimes some grandparents and other people who are well-wishers of the whole idea, who may not be parents of the children, but who are connected with the community. So that's loosely the community. So what we do is when there is a challenge, let's say there is a conflict between X and Y over whatever ideas or ideals or whatever, we call the whole community and we say, let's play around with this conflict. We don't have to resolve it. We don't have to solve it. Maybe we will dissolve it. I don't know what will happen. We're not looking for an outcome, but we are looking this as the next fun thing to play around with, right? Not in a frivolous, fun manner. I hope I'm not coming across like that. In a really deeper way, look at the underlying beliefs, and consider each one's beliefs, because different people, based on different experiences, will have different beliefs and different thought processes and different styles. And we can at least, just with this, I can learn 50 different beliefs and 30 different styles and 20 different, things. And I may go pulling my hair out. That's all right. Because the idea was not to resolve it, but the idea was to actually churn more using the same challenge, which is challenging us at this moment. And what we also realize is that then the challenges don't really remain challenges. I mean, they finally fade away, whichever way, whether they get resolved, dissolved, absorbed, whatever. Right? There's just play of words, but they kind of like go away. But what we had experienced as a learning or experiential learning, if you may want to call it, is so much more beautiful. And in a funny way, we started with open learning, and then the very learning of challenges has opened us up, right, to different people, different thought processes, different styles, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if there has been a biggest challenge, because as I said, each challenge is just a game, whether it was a financial challenge, whether it was people challenge, whether it was conflict challenge, whether it was, challenge with the with somebody else outside the community. But every one of it has been so much. Yeah, I'm still using the word fun, but in a very deeper sense of it, where we were actually with it, sometimes for days and sometimes for weeks and months. So yeah, I think that's what I would like to share as one perspective about it.
Thank you, Ranesh. Yeah, I guess that it loses its power once that you consider it as part of the game, as that problems, challenges, and conflicts are part of the game and something that they are opportunities to learning, then it loses the thing that makes you feel that you cannot change it and kind of oppress you and then doesn't allow you to be. But when we say, hey, this we are playing, we are trying to figure this out, and yeah, also sometimes we need time to accept something. So thank you for sharing that perspective. Richard, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. And little reference back, Ratnesh, I really like the way you make it sound like fun, and that we don't have to drive towards some solution, that we just have to really be together, trust each other, like each other, and appreciate differences. And so the spirit that you present there to me is really refreshing, I find, and I thank you for that. Also, Katrin, something that really stood out that you said was you have to stay in the game, and that to me is all important. There's a quote by Arundhati Roy. She said, the trouble is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There's no innocent. Either way, you're accountable. And I really like that quote. That as much as says that you've got to stay in the game. And if you don't, you're, from my perspective, you're walking away from life. You're going to live something other than what would be your full capacity, your best self. And so a really important message there. These questions, to me, David and Luz, are great. They really help to focus on where things need to change. And we have been here before. We've been almost identically in this spot in the 1960s. This is talking about change in education. 1960s, early 70s, there was the free school movement, it was called. Movement was attached to the free schools. And yet, in this book by Jonathan Causel, it's not much to show, it's just black book, called Free Schools. He quotes right at the start of it George Dennison, who was at that time at least a well-known educator, thinker. And Dennison said, one hears more frequently now of parents banding together, finding teachers, and starting little schools. There are no signs that a movement exists, but there are many signs that one might. And so very prophetic, actually. The movement did not materialize. We went back to a very conventional way of doing education. I would say that we're actually worse off. Children are worse off in school today than they were back then. So we've been losing ground. And the challenge then is this moment that we're in now, which matches in so many ways where we were in the 60s. Are we going to be able to make a movement out of it? And we have promising signs that maybe it could work this time, but it's going to be a challenge. It's a big challenge. And so the question, I think, was, just to repeat here, if I can find where I'm at here, that's question number one. Question number two, the biggest challenge that you faced. It's a challenge that I'm facing now, that I think we're all facing now. And that is, can we actually make a movement out of what we have going on? And promising signs are that things have changed in many ways since the 60s, even though our conventional schools haven't. And one of the big things is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The UN provided that. in the 80s, 1980s, well after the free school movement of the 60s. So we have that to build on, which the Rights-Centric Education Network has picked up on, as we need to pull education into alignment with human rights. And it makes its arguments based on UN human rights documents, what the UN is saying. So instead of people today being these or perceived as radical extremists, we are not that. We are allies of the United Nations, helping to bring around the idea of human rights, helping the world to implement human rights. And human rights are fundamental to democracy. We can't have strong democracies if they're not embedded in human rights. And so to recover our current situation with democracies declining around the world, we've got to get human rights entrenched. And if we're not doing it in our schools, it's not going to happen. You don't suddenly turn adults into people who understand human rights if for most of their formative years, they've been subjected to authoritarian rule, basically, in conventional schools. A couple of the other promising things for us at this time, creating hope that maybe we can create a movement this time around, is wealth of literature and projects that we have. I'm going to put, again, some links in the chat here. One is to School Circles, which is a documentary done, Nelson, by a couple in Brazil that's amazing. It's Charlie and Marie. They produced this film, School Circles, and it shows how sociocracy is being applied in several schools in the Netherlands. Great example of something we can build on. Another link is to Subame, the Pioneer of Possibility, which is about a school in Estonia, which is publicly funded. It's a school within a school based on, I'm just going to correct here a little bit the post I'm putting in. It's based on self-directed learning. Charlie Marino Romero is the person who's the driver behind it, or who created it. And so there we have an example of how we can provide education within a public school, conventional public school, and give the children there a choice of a self-directed learning environment or the conventional learning environment. So we have examples like that like these ones that have developed outside public education since the 60s. So we have a lot more that we can point to build on. And then there's also Peter Gray's Free to Learn. I said free to play in the chat there, but it's free to learn. And the link that I put in is to an organization that he helped to found, the Alliance for Self-Directed Education. And so we have groups like that, and views like Peter's Free to Learn. I can't correct that there, but that's something, just a problem for people to deal with. And so we have that kind of thing to build on also. And then there's what I've mentioned before. We have the Two Loops model video that helps us to conceptualize where we are in the paradigm shift. We have the Rights-Centric Education Network, which is not an organization. It's just an invitation for us to come together around the idea of pulling education into alignment with human rights. And it's picked up on this community of practice from the film, the Two Loops model video. So we have this idea of what we have to do. We have to get our community together. We have to establish this community of practice. We've got to get people stepping up to show that they're on board by signing the Declaration of Child Rights-Centered Education, which is where we can bring that community of practice together around the idea of human rights, but we're not dictating to people what they should do with it. We all know that we're trying to pull in the same direction here, but we pull in different ways, and everybody is still free to pull in their own way. And we'll figure it out. We'll just have fun like Ratnish has encouraged us to have as we challenge this, face this challenge. And then I'd like to keep bringing attention to this idea of conscious collaboration, that we need to understand that better, that's the essence of our community of practice, that if we can consciously collaborate, not just incidentally or haphazardly, but actually think about that. That's what the Rights-Centric Education Network is all about. Let's consciously collaborate. And this Learning Planet Festival coming up around, it's January 24th is the International Day of Education. And so as a first step of this emerging network, it has over 160 founding members, Evolving Education, David Luz, both behind it, founders of it. If we can start to crank that up, then maybe we can actually make the movement out of this that people were not able to make out of the free school movement of the 60s. So another question, David and Luz, that you just plugged right into where I'm at. Thanks for asking it.
Thank you, Richard, for sharing all these insights and resources as well.
Yes,
Then,
well, is asking for the links. I just put them there.
okay. Okay, maybe we go to Nelson. So just remember the question, Nelson. What challenges have you faced in communities, and what life experiences can you share with us?
Well, there was a trick here in this question for me, because for 2 or 3 times the first answer that came to me when I read this question was, well, the challenge was money. But of course, going deeper, because we don't want to believe that money, having money, not having money, could stop our dreams, our capacity, our creativity. I just decided not to choose this other question about money, because I'm very curious to listen to my colleagues about this. But of course, we had lots of experiences trying to create our own financial system, our own economical system, our communitary coin and social money, and etc. But then, of course, trying to go deeper in the relationship with money and how the presence or the absence of money can affect our communitary life, our learning community. I then could realize that it's not only about money, it's also, and maybe especially, about power. And then it came to me 2 different challenges, but they are, of course, connected, I believe. One was when everybody went out. So suddenly the project, the community, after some years, was empty for different reasons, family reasons, disease, money, conflicts, and suddenly everybody was gone. And then I was in that empty space I was talking about before, and making these questions, starting again, what is wrong with me, with the project? What's the problem? What's the challenge really here? No? In the other experience, it was a little different, the circumstances. It was after 1.5 years building a very, very beautiful group dynamic, beautiful relationships, deep links, dreaming and starting to make it happen, building the first houses. Then suddenly the owner of the land decided to change the perspectives and decided to finish the project. So we were having this huge discussion and creating the rules of the community for 1.5 years, and even how would we buy maybe the land to transform it in a collective, not property, let's say like that. And suddenly this pattern of the system that we are running to replace, let's say, or to recreate, was there in the center of the circle again, saying there is an owner here. Also, all this dynamic, all this horizontal discussion about dreams and how to support each other and how to connect with this proposal, suddenly had a very, very shock stop, a very difficult, traumatic end that was basically based in a decision of one person. And of course, the question also makes me think about the learnings that came from these both experiences, as you are asking. And some of these people, after this trauma, they are still connected. They are still together, trying again. And we are making part of the same experience again after that. But then, not to talk more about the financial or the power issue that can be really a difficult challenge. What about if we are not playing the same game? So maybe these differences, this diversity that shows how each one is dealing with power and money, can reveal other aspects of how are we embracing this. So I was listening a lot about education here, and I am allowing myself to talk like that because in some layer, I believe that life and education is the same. There are not different. So are we playing the same game? Are we allowing ourselves to play this game honestly, really putting ourselves in an uncomfortable zone and believing that we making part of this game will be really growing and learning and exchanging and making this magic dream happen. So I think these two experiences, they showed that it's important to keep taking care about this question. Am I in a community or in a community project or in a community dream because I cannot deal with the system? So I am running from something. I am avoiding something. Am I here because I don't believe I can do that alone, or because it creates some facilities to me to be in a beautiful place in nature with beautiful people, but I innerly maybe that's not the game that I really would like to be playing right now. So saying that, at the same time, I recognize that these kind of questions or this kind of crisis, to take the issue of crisis again, they are the most richest part of this game. But to recognize that and to take advantage of that, we must be in the game. That's my perception about this. If there is still the possibility to somebody to cut the game, to end the game, and it's not a decision of the group. So each one will deal with a different perspective of learning, but we won't be in the same game. So for me, it's very rich, the perspective to continue in the game, even if something or even something from outside comes and seems to be powerful enough to stop the game. For me, a very rich perspective is, of learning in this case is if we decide to stay in the game. There is no land anymore, there is no money anymore, but we are here. We really are here. We are really playing this game. And then, as I said, I will stop here because I am really wanting to listen to this perspective, because I don't allow myself to believe that money can be really a challenge, but I affirm that it's one of the biggest challenges that we had, not only these two experiences, but in all the communitary experience that I had, money and power. So thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Wow, all of you share very common themes. That was really fascinating to hear. Really staying in the game, really enduring, and it's kind of the name of this event, Roots of Resilience. It's like we know where, and this is something that Luther and I kind of knew from the beginning, because when we were researching in education, going to all these spaces, everyone was like, this is tough. It's not going to happen overnight. Whatever you want to do in education, it's a long-term vision, it's a long-term project. So from the beginning, we have been like, yeah, we're in this for the long run. We know it's gonna take a while, but as you mentioned, it's tough along that process, and you need to trust. You need to trust a lot in people. You need to really take care of each other, so that it's really possible, and that independently of what happened, the lands not being available anymore, things changing, we have each other. Yeah, what mentioned Nelson at the end of, okay, things have changed, but we are here. We really want this. We really want this space, these bonds, these connections, this humanity that we want to awaken in ourselves and in the community, in the world. And still, there seems to be this this very, very common challenge of money. So let's talk about money. When we put in the group of the event, what challenges do you have? The first one that came through was money, capital letters. How to make sustainable learning communities, education projects, how to make sustainable this. And we know this very well, because this space of working with children in learning in communities, it's kind of a given that it needs to be for free, or we're working in a space where we're all experimenting with living differently, right? And that creates a bit of tension with the conventional sources of capital. So let's jump into it, and feel free to complement and add ideas as you want. And the question is, what have you learned about making education projects and learning communities financially sustainable? Maybe Radnesh, you are the one that is still with his learning community ongoing, so you must have found something.
Okay, so to just illustrate how we have been working, I want to go back to 1998. And that was the first time we thought we will work with children. So we had no by the way, we have no education background in terms of children or learning or psychology or nothing. We knew nothing about children. And so we thought we will learn about children and learn about learning and so-called education by being with children. Finally, they should teach us. Right. So that's how we started off. We did not go to any workshop, courses, books, nothing. And the first thought that came to us, so we are going to learn from children, about learning, but their parents better pay us. So the first time we were out there, it was a paid program that people paid for having the children with us. And yes, that's another thing. We all had a great time, right? But the idea was that, yeah, every time we put it up, we said, okay, contribute, right? Now the thing was, different people contributed different amounts, and that was okay. It wasn't necessary that everybody paid the same, and that's how we have always moved. So I'm just taking back to very small amounts at that time, but the idea was not okay. So I whatever we put in, we were putting in, and people were also contributing for our work. And so when we actually formally formed ROE, and ever since then, it's always like that. Whenever somebody comes in, wants to be part of community in any which way, we say contribute financially in whichever amount you can. And so in the Hindi language, we call it AKSD, which in Hindi means apni khushi se do, which may not make any sense to you all, but it means give as per your wish and keep giving. So it's not like you have to give only in the upfront or only on Mondays or only on a certain day. Just keep giving financially wherever you have some, whatever you have, you just keep on contributing, and the community will keep on contributing, hopefully for your growth, your excitement, your joy, and so on. So we can then freely focus on the joy of doing and the joy of learning and living rather than worrying about the money. And even though it's been so open that people give whatever they want, uh, there have been a lot of skeptics. A lot of people have challenged us that no, don't do it this way. Put a fixed amount. Only then people will pay. People will not pay. You will get ruined and all that. Well, it's been what? Sorry, I'm calculating 26 years. Well, we haven't been ruined at all. Right? Yes, there are ups and downs. And when there are downs, we go back to the same people and say, hello, we are going through a down. We are going through a deficit. We budgeted this much, and now we don't have the contributions and so on. And somehow, somewhere, some angels they fly past and drop something and so on. It just keeps going. I don't know how it keeps going. But one thing very, very integral is we have to keep communicating. We can't kind of sit and think or imagine or believe or wish or pray that people will contribute. We have to keep communicating that, hey, keep contributing. We have to keep saying this word, keep contributing, keep contributing. I mean, in different forms, not like a rant or a chant, but more like an idea that, hey, we all need to keep contributing, and that's how things will keep moving. We have to keep filling the petrol in our vehicle kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's how it's been going on. And well, I can't really comment more because that's what it is, and that's how it has worked for us even till date. Yeah,
Wow, so you really
and
embrace
we
the
are
gift
blessed.
economy.
Yes, absolutely, gift economy, absolutely.
And do you, because there are many ways, right, to make gift economy possible. Do you share kind of your expenses after putting the salary of all the facilitators and so on, so that
Yes,
people
yeah,
know this is
it's an
what we're aiming
open
for?
open financials. Yes, absolutely. It's anytime anybody can check, hey, how are things going on and where what is going. And yes, it's absolutely open. The financials are open and so on. Yeah, yeah.
All
Not
right.
that there has not been challenges in that, as in the
Mm-hmm.
sense people will come and say, see, I gave this much, others are not giving. Those kind of
Mm-hmm.
things happen. When you
Mm-hmm.
just, as I said, that's the learning part where you call everybody and say, oh, how do we want to do it? And at the end of the game, at the end of the day, everybody comes back and saying, no, no, we'll stay with what we have been doing. That's the best. So we haven't really ever totally, changes. Every time the communication keeps changing little here and there, but the key is keep communicating. That's at least what we think is the key. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And do you have these sharing contributions are just from the families that are part of the project, or do you also do some sort of kind of fundraising from outside?
Yeah, because we are all the time connecting with whoever wants to connect with. So, for example, I'll give you one small example. Which you are familiar with, is every Saturday we do a meetup. You remember we did one with both of you also, David and Luz, every Saturday, and that is our commitment to the world. Anybody can come in, ask questions, take help. There is no cost to it, and we've been doing it for 5 years every single Saturday. So
Wow.
we are there for people to ask questions, whether they have a 2-year-old, whether they're even expecting their child, or whether they are starting a center or starting a community, whatever, whoever it is. So I'm saying that way we keep getting connected with people. So there is a community at large, other than the parents and the direct beneficiaries, but there are a lot of indirect beneficiaries in many different forms. When it was COVID, we did lots of webinars and seminars and whatever, because we were free, nothing to do, so let's do this. Zoom was there, so like that. So I think, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We will keep focus on what the community is for, and for the children, for understanding the self-directed learning, like what Richard was talking about. And so we can keep doing what we can do, so that, and people can keep contributing, so that we can keep doing what we can do. Right. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
But we haven't really, once we have run a funding campaign, but otherwise we haven't, but that was for a specific purpose, not for the general financials of the community, but for a specific campaign that we wanted to do. So we raised funding. Otherwise, we have never really done funding. But yeah, as I told, the communication keeps going on.
Thank you, Katrin. Would you like to continue and share? Because I imagine also here we have different contexts, right? For instance, now Katrin is going to share about the school in the Netherlands, all the permits, all the taxes and all the things that are involved there. I imagine that make running a school over there quite expensive. How did you manage, and how did you find your relationship with money?
First of all things, it's interesting that I answer these questions, because my relationship with money is quite, I don't understand it. I don't understand all the things we do with money and how it runs and how it goes. And I did my best to get it, but I never got it. So that's my background. And the school I was with for more than 14 years, who was around for 19 years and is just closed down this summer. It's one of the schools who is featured in the school circles. So we were based on sociocratic education, and we were the only school which was founded, was paid by the government, and that brought a lot of restrictions with it. So the first one was that we only were allowed to be a primary school, so up to 12 years, maybe 14. Then you had to move on. So that's quite difficult for a democratic education school, because you have this break. You have to bring them somewhere, and they have to be at a special point then. And it's also the money by itself, because when we started, we were all these pioneers, like Ratner said, you just were there because you had to be there. And we had some money coming in from parents who paid, and it was like, okay, what do you need so you can stay here? So it was like we just shared it this way. It's not like you get it for this hour, but it's more like, okay, we need you here, so you want to be here, we need you here, so what do you need so you can stay here? And it was different for every person. So that's what the discussions we came from. And then we became this paid school, and we grew. We had to grow, because otherwise you lose it. We had to have 200 children in 5 years, and we came from 50. So you can imagine we had after 3 years, we had 200, and we just went on. We said, okay, then we get the money forever. Otherwise we had to close down again after 5 years. But it put a big pressure on the whole system. And one of the pressures was that we had to have more teachers, more people around. And they also came for the money, not only because they wanted a different kind of education, and maybe they liked it, or they said, oh, no, it's nicer to work like that. But they wouldn't have come if there wouldn't have been this payment. So there was a big difference in the team already. And it also was like that you get paid by your experience as a teacher and by your education. So the equality was gone, because then you have some main teachers and you have assistants and you have so everybody had got his own thing. I stayed working as a freelancer, which also was quite an interesting thing because there was some things happening I couldn't have imagined because I was the freelancer. It was like, okay. So, and then it was also that the education was free for parents. And that's also a complete different population you get and the complete different people you have to work with. And I guess what we found if you follow the money, that we became kind of a small society. Like Richard said, it's going on for a long time, and it's really good for me to hear that it's like, oh yeah, it's the stream that's going on everywhere. But we become this really small little society with all the different things going on and the conflicts we had were like, yeah, like in the Netherlands or in Europe or in the whole world, we had the same kind of conflicts. And I guess what made that we couldn't survive was that we had this sociocratic system based on equality, but there were all this informal hierarchy going on because of, I think also a lot because of the money and a bit also because we didn't get the basic choices aligned. Because one of the choices was that a lot of us didn't want to have this bait education because we were afraid of everything would come with it. And so I'm still in the process of evaluating it, what happened really. And because it's still my findings, talking to a lot of people, but I want to do it a bit more scientifically, like really doing interviews with people and working out what happened here. But I guess this money thing, that what we make with money, because money, it's nothing at itself. And this hierarchy that comes with money, like what's said before, the power that comes with money, it's very difficult to handle in a community when you want to be equal and you want to talk from equal places. Because it's just, there's so much connected to it. It takes a lot of consciousness, a lot of work to get through all this, everything which coming with this hierarchy for money, I guess. So yeah, maybe I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Katrin. Actually, one of the questions that we got from people was whether any of you have worked with the government, and the answer is yes. And it wasn't like in the government, at least, for getting this funding to access the school to more families, and it brought different challenges, right?
Yes, but maybe it's good to say also, like Richard said, but you have to stay in the game or you're in the game anyway. I'm sure it's possible, but you just need the time and you have to figure out how you do it, and you have to get the support. And but yeah, don't underestimate what it brings with it and what you bring into your community, because you not like Bratner said, you did it yourself. You're like, that's what we do, and please contribute, and we make it. And you lose this possibility because you have to report. You get judged by people outside from the community, and they have power over you. It's like it's real, and it's doing a lot to the community. Yes. So you have to be very, very strong as a community, very clear about what you deliver, where you go with it, and where you say no. That's we don't leave this ground. So you also have to know when to say, okay, then we don't take the money anymore. Because otherwise I think you really get lost in all this money game. Nobody understands actually, I guess. Not only me. So.
Thank you, Katrin. And did the school then finally close because of lack of funding or the?
Yeah, that's still what I'm trying to find out, why it's closed. But I guess what really was visible, we had this inspection is coming and looking at the school. Are you worth of being funded? And we had some points we didn't be good enough, or we didn't do what they needed us to do, or we couldn't show them that we did what they needed us to do. And this, it took too long. We were there for about 7 years, 8 years of all different circumstances. And it wore the community completely out. Like at the end, the whole school team, we couldn't function anymore. And it also was because we lost each other. It was like everybody was working on its own. So the pressure from the outside, and we went really on one line from how do we do it? But actually it was like the funding we could have, it still was there, but it got a bit less. But the work pressure was too high. So the school decided, or the team decided, like, okay, we're gonna stop. We don't do it anymore. So we stopped before they said we are not getting the funding anymore. But I think we were quite close. It could have gone on, but it was like in the closing.
I guess precisely the pressure that creates then make you compromise in that core thing that we were talking about before. Like there is some core values that if we touch, then everything starts to move, and yeah, those things are important. To what decisions, if I accept this thing, then what decisions and what things do I need to compromise in order for like each of the people to satisfy their own needs, depending on the needs that each of them have. But yeah, and
I guess it's getting very difficult when you get into this survival mode, because then the needs shift. And I guess we went there after a while. And also the pressure from the outside, like, what are you doing? Community inside was like, oh, it's not working. So yeah.
Yeah, and that goes straight away to the next question, and is those personal challenges that we face through those difficult situations, no? Because then there are some pressures and some situations that we cannot control anymore, and then how do we deal with that? And so yeah, the question is, have you gone through any personal crisis, like reaching burnout or losing hope, for instance, and how did you get out of it, and what helps you to persevere and be resilient? Because as it's a marathon, there are a lot of resistance there to build. So for example, Richard, do you want to go on?
Thanks, Luz. I'm just looking at time here. Are you going to be cutting it off at some point? Just wondering how quick I should make my remarks here.
I mean, we were supposed to finish at 30, like the half an hour, but whichever is, I want to respect people's time, so maybe we can do a quick round, more or less. Although I think that is one of the subjects that is more important. So.
I asked because I'd like to provide some answer to number 4 question, just how we might proceed now. given the money problem and the conditions that we see around the world, what parents can do, or teachers who want to get out of the system to get more freedom can do, that's reasonable. And there's a lot new on that, but I'll hold on that for a moment and answer number 3 to some extent. I'm going to, before I get to the personal side of it, I'll just say that change really does begin with changing ourselves. We can talk about all the change that other people have to do, but if we don't look at how to change ourselves, it's not going to happen. And my changing self was decades happening, and so I have to realize that other people have that same problem. It's going to take them time, and we have to be understanding of that. Sugata Mitra, you might know him as the person who ran the experiment of a computer in a wall in an Indian suburb or slum, they call it. And what he found there, he was at an ARO conference that I was attending. ARO is the Alternative Education Resource Organization that runs an annual conference, and it was in person at that time. Sugata was there. There was a group of us in the cafeteria just sitting with him, hearing what he had to say. And one thing he said is, you have to look after the culprits. And the Two Loops model video says the same thing about hospicing, that you have to help the old system die with dignity, which is a great little comment. And so we can't overly rush this. We have to find where we can make a difference. And so for me, I started off teaching in the 60s. After 3 years, I had to quit. It was it just felt too wrong. And so I went traveling for a year trying to figure out what to do with my life. I didn't have the same sense of things as you did, Luz. I didn't know to go looking at what's happening in other places, other schools and that. I was just off trying to find myself. My wife and I went traveling and worked here and there at different things and had a stimulating year, but I found nothing. Gradually, I came to realize that it's the time in history that we're living. You can be in education, or all of the other things I looked at were so unperfect. Also, this capitalistic, competitive world that we're in. Where are the jobs? Where are the things that you want to do? And ultimately, I decided that you really can't do more than helping the young find their way in life, trying to help them not be oppressed the way I felt I was, looking back, not knowing it at the time. And so I came back after that year away with no answers, except back into teaching. I came from a family of teachers, and so it was expected that that's what we did. And so I was there, still not knowing why I was there, and yet returning with some of the ideas that I picked up over reading, and that it's a bitter man who tries to live outside history, and the serenity prayer that reads, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And so these were guiding things, and they stay with me because life is still, we're trying to dig out of a hole here, and it takes a lot of resilience and keeping your mind focused on what's important. And so I returned to school, but it's wearing. Katrin, you kind of nailed to me a lot of the stresses that people are under trying to cope with education at this time. And I would leave and go back, and I left this one time to do that Child Focus magazine that was mentioned. I didn't have answers. really at that time. I had read this book, Education and Ecstasy, that totally touched me. I got it on a Friday night, started reading it, and it just defined so beautifully everything that I was feeling bad about education. It starts off with these two little sentences that more or less says it all for me. Teachers are overworked and underpaid. True. It is an exacting and exhausting business, this damming up the flood of human potentiality. And so that's how George Leonard, who wrote the book, started it, that teaching is the job of damming up human potentiality. How can you feel good about that? And so I read on through, I agreed with all the arguments that he presented. And he also presented, though, a scenario of what he called a Kennedy school, which is basically a self-directed learning school. I was so indoctrinated with the idea that I would amount to nothing if I didn't do what the adults told me I should be doing, that I couldn't see that scenario. And I gave the book to people thinking that they might champion change. And some of them, entrenched in public education, couldn't get past page 10 of it. It just so offended them that somebody was saying that everything they were doing for the good of children was going down the wrong road. It's a real challenge for good people feeling like they're doing good for children, to be told that everything you're doing is actually in the wrong direction. And so I had that to contend with, and that led, I'm back in teaching again. I have all these thoughts going on. And then the International Year of the Child comes up, 1979. It's on the horizon. And I'm in a school board. I've written some science curriculum. So I'm a special education teacher, totally unqualified to be going around teaching other teachers what they should be doing. But that was my job. And I saw this Year of the Child coming up, and restless. I had to do more. And at that time, I didn't know what more to do other than try to grow the conversation. And so that's what Child Focus magazine was all about. And if you talk about crises, going back a little bit, when I read what George Leonard wrote about damming up the flood of human potentiality, I read that book over a weekend. I wrote my letter of resignation up on that Sunday night and took it in the next morning. And I was a bit of a problem in the school because I was always trying to get people to discuss more. Don't just take it. Let's talk about it and see if we can get somewhere. So when I presented the letter to my principal, she was glad to accept it. This got rid of a problem for her. And so I then was out on my own and looking for what to do next. And I ended up cycling across Canada, sponsored by the Canadian Youth Hostels Association, the Quebec branch of it. And I was to drop into hostels, winding my way around. I went from the very west coast to the very east coast of Canada. It was a little over 9,000 kilometers of cycling. And that was sort of a soul-searching time. And that was crisis. And I had to dig out of that with these philosophical thoughts that I mentioned. But Child Focus magazine, the challenge of cycling 9,000 kilometers is something that's a challenge that made me feel like I could do more. That the bigger the challenge you face, if you can accomplish it, the more confidence you have to go on to bigger challenges. And so I took on the challenge of Child Focus magazine, and that was like multitudes more stress and effort than cycling across Canada. I had left teaching. I used my 10 years of pension money to help finance this magazine. I absolutely buried myself with just exhaustion, working 16 hours a day trying to do the editorial and the selling of ads and everything else. And I came away from that thinking that was not worth it. There was just not enough good coming out of this that made that effort worthwhile. There was an accountant that I met at the beginning of it, and it had been advised to me that if you're starting a business, the first thing you should do is get a good accountant. And so I was shopping around for an accountant who might take me on pro bono, because this is such a wonderful thing I was trying to accomplish. And one of them that I spoke to said to me, "This sounds like a very expensive way to get an education." And that's exactly what it turned out to be. I didn't realize the value of it until the years went on. So through the 80s, early 90s, I started to realize the value of that experience to me. But that was a tough one, and it just enables you to go on and face more once you have recovered from it. Again, the serenity prayer is an important part of that, and that personal bit, I'll leave it that at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard, for sharing your experience. Katrin, would you like to continue?
Personal crisis. I think, like I said before, as a child already, I didn't really understand what we did in education. I was kind of conscious that what happened to myself or to friends of mine, that it didn't work. That teachers did stuff to make something work, and it didn't work. So why did they keep on doing it? It was like this question I had: why do they do what to do? Because everybody could see that it doesn't work. So and I did teachers education, but I couldn't teach. I couldn't stand in front of a class because it just wasn't possible to do what I was asked to do. So I just left it behind, and I said, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not going into it. I'm just I went abroad. I went to the Netherlands. I started working in a cafe, and I said, okay, it's fine. And then I gave birth to my first daughter, and the only wish I had was like making space for her. Like I had to make space for her, but also space and that she was able to follow her own dreams, her own possibilities. And I always was in conversation with her because nobody could tell me how to do it. So, and I said, I don't know it either. So I told her when she was 2 months old, like, we have to do it together. You have to tell me what you need. So like, that's what I did. And what I didn't realize then was that I would get into trouble with that because it didn't fit into society. So my wish making space for her ended up making space for myself and for her, and getting into conflicts and finding out how to do it, and brought me back to education. So that's how I came into the school, asking the same questions again and finding different solutions. And with everything what happened with the school, I told before, after when I left, it's now 2.5 years ago, I left school and I really was like, no, I'm not doing anymore. My children are older now, they have to do it themselves, and I don't do anything for education. I was completely disillusioned because I it felt like running in circles. I had these discussions about it's not working, tests, exams, everything, it's not working. So we have to change, but we have to have good quality education, so we have to test more. That was the conversations I had, and I couldn't get my mind around it. Like, how does it happen? Where do we get lost all the time? And so I decided I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to do permaculture, going to work in gardens, doing ecological research, earning money with it, actually, because there's a lot of money in. But yeah, like if it's in you, you can't stay away. So somehow I met Luce and David on the internet. I don't even know anymore. But I ended up having this phone call with David, like, okay, I'm not gonna do it, but I think I'm doing it. So it's like, I don't want to do it. And then, yeah, I was hooked again, like with your beautiful program, everything's coming back. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. And actually what made me coming back is like that I really know now what I'm standing for, and I'm not afraid anymore to pronounce it. Like to say, okay, it's you can do it this way, but it's really damaging. With our school system, we are damaging our children. And it's okay if we choose it, but it's like it is. And that makes it easier now. And maybe it's also the age and everything like that people listen to you a bit more. But it helps me like just doing this work every day again. And like I think Ratner said, it's like, yeah, you just play around with it and it's getting more fun. And if there's solutions, nice. If they are not, we just keep on going. We grow and we have fun together. So maybe that's what's life about. So I'm back into the education field and yeah, doing my share for changing it for the better for our children. Yes.
I see there's so much like that it's not ability to listen to ourselves, is to listen to ourselves and really be brave and stand out, like protect and defend the things that we believe on, and then that leaves you a sense of peace because you're being coherent with who you are. So then nothing can go wrong because at least we are at peace with ourselves. Nelson, would you like to share something else?
So that's really an issue that we want to listen more and to listen more, maybe to speak as well. But right now, I believe I can try to make it really shorter. The crises were there. If we are talking about real crisis, personal crisis, as you asked, I could talk about two crises. One that made me stop really with everything I was doing at that time, 15 years ago. And that was basically the reason I started to search something. And this something didn't exist. Even if I find it huge, beautiful communities, projects, people, but this something didn't exist. But I was there searching, and that was the solution. It was to search. And the second crisis was more recent, and it also affected the mental health and everything that we are also facing with our friends and relatives and people in general. And for both situations, the resilience was there because love was there. Love was basically what I was looking for in this search. And when I found something that could really be an answer for this no answer question, this answer was love. I didn't realize before this true crisis, especially the last one, the number of people supporting me, and I was in this arrogant position to believe that I was there always in the social projects in the communities to support other people, but never imagining that I would need that kind of support, because I'm talking about basic kind of support, health, therapy, spending time, just listening, just talking, just in silence, just crying. And the answer is really this obvious word, it's love, it's about love. So resilience doesn't happen, I believe, if you don't feel this love or this need for love, even about yourself. It's much deeper than be able or surrender to love each other, to allow yourself to be loved. But it's to understand, to realize that that's the final condition, the base condition for life. So we must be in touch with the real love. So, and that's what made me be back, not stop, overcome. It's about love, without doubt.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and this love, I think, is bringing us to and this search for caring for each other is bringing us to the final recommendations, advices for people that are in this search for how this search at personal level or community level. And I know Ratnesh needs to leave us in a few seconds, so maybe I give you the mic, Ratnesh, to say goodbye and to give us your last piece of advice.
Okay, I don't know if I have a piece of advice or not, but just I'll come back to let's keep playing the game. Right, the players will change, but as they say, football never dies. It's the same way. We go on. We go on with the self-directed, the child-centered approaches because we believe in them and not because of any other reasons. And everything else will keep changing. Yeah. So, yep, if people are starting new, I would say it's fun. We have had a lot of fun, so I would say it's fun. If you think of every challenge as fun, then it's gonna be great fun. If you want some nice, clean uniform, then it wouldn't work. Otherwise, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So go for it, is what I would say to anybody who's starting now. Yeah. And thank you, everybody. It's been such a nice listening to all of you and absorbing. I've been making small notes on the side. I hope I will go back to them tomorrow and kind of pick up a lot of things from there. So thank you and namaste. Yeah.
Thank you, Ratnesh.
Thank you, Ratna. Really appreciated hearing your perspective.
Thank you. I know it's getting late for you. Okay, maybe Katrin, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I also want to start with saying thank you to you all for doing what you do and for all the insights I got again and for feeling connected. And maybe that brings me to an advice. Still, I'm quite careful with advices, but what I found and what I really enjoy is like this kind of telling stories and telling your story to somebody else and to telling what you're going through and to listen to other people and helping each other out with doubts, but also telling the stories how you did it or listen to people who they did it. It's so strong and it helps you to stay on the path you want to be, and it gives you more courage to do it. It's also a kind of resilience you can fall back to if you have people you can share stories with. So maybe it's a very, very profound thing to do. I would also in every community is just take time, this empty space, Nelson said, like, and just share stories like what you going through, and how did you do this, and how did you do that, and how do you feel about things? There's so much connection there, and so much the love maybe you need from yourself and from others, and so yeah.
Thank you, Katrin.
I leave it by that, and thank you again also for organizing this, Luce and David. Thank you.
Nelson, do you want to continue?
It's just love again. Really beautiful time with you here. I'm really grateful. Let's keep doing that, each one in a different way, but the same love way behind everything. I'm really grateful. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And Richard?
I just put a couple of links repeating in the chat, urging people to sign the declaration. This is where we can come together, create a movement, and yet still do our own things, approach in our own ways. It's not a new organization as such. It's an invitation to do that conscious collaboration. And then also to rally around the Learning Planet Festival, which again is an effort to grow the conversation about a new social contract for education. Katrin, so much of your story, I see myself in it. And you said that you're back at it because it's just in you and you can't deny it. And that's where I'm at. It's said about material things that you don't own your stuff. Your stuff owns you. And I find the same with this this idea about education, trying to pursue it as a fundamental answer to how we can heal the world. It owns me. I don't own it. I can't help having to pursue it every day. And it, while it can be frustrating in that, at the same time, I really appreciate that it's given my life purpose. I look at people who are living their lives without purpose, the number of teachers that have retired, and not to disparage golf at all, but all they have in their lives is golf. And if something happens health-wise that they can't play it anymore, they become just lost. And so this having to pursue education, despite the frustrations, I really see it as a gift that gives me purpose. Nelson, talking about love, what really sealed it for me, where I finally got that vision of what we had to be doing, was lived experience. We need for people to have lived experience with young learners who are directing their own learning, free to learn their own way. When you see them doing that, and it can't be just a drop into a school somewhere to visit for a week, it doesn't give you enough. It has to be an extended lived experience where you see what, in my case, I ran a program that allowed me to see this, and it sealed it for me. I saw how students came into the program and their eyes are kind of glazed over, they're bored, they aren't alive really. And in such a short time, they come to life. And I would say that what it really boils down to is that the community of learners that grew from that, the core thing was, as you said, Nelson, it's love. When people feel that they're in a community where there's love, it's amazing what comes out of it. Change, that idea that 50 years ago we were in the free school movement time, and the fact that we're still in that same spot, really raises the question of who are the culprits, and we're all to blame. The people like myself, I went a long time blaming the people inside public education that were refusing to change. And the way I look at it now is that all of the people like me on the outside have failed to change also. We've failed to realize that just nattering away at this question the way we have been isn't making any difference, that we have to do something different. And that's where the conscious collaboration comes in. Very quickly, a couple of final notes here addressing the money problem and the need that people have. The question was about advice for people that might want to get out of public education and start their own way of doing things. I was twice heavily involved in exploring whether or not we could create democratic schools. Once was in the 70s with 5 teachers, and then in the 90s with a bunch of parents that had a good sense of what self-directed learning was all about. Ultimately, we decided that financially we couldn't sustain it, and that the people that would end up coming to the school would be people that were desperate to find some alternative. And so then we would become labeled a school of last resort. It would be a school that served as an example for kids who couldn't make it in the regular system. And we wanted an example of how things could be different for all kids. And so we ended up not getting those things off the ground. What I would do now if I were starting out is there's a lot that's coming out about local learning ecosystems, education cities, and what I would do starting out now, addressing the money problem also, is start out with a bunch of people who are homeschoolers, come together as basically a learning community that way. And as homeschoolers, you can circumvent a lot of the government policies about what you have to be doing with your kids. You just get them all registered as homeschoolers. You don't actually create a school. You're just going to be a community of learners, of homeschoolers. And then this idea of a local learning community takes stock of all the resources within your community, your city, your town, whatever, and use them all. So libraries are changing. They're providing maker spaces now and meetup spaces. There's a lot of new opportunity for learning in them. And as Peter Gray says, libraries are places publicly paid for. So it's public money going into education, but it's education where you go in with what you want to learn and somebody's there to help you, as opposed to walking into a school that's forced learning. And so you take advantage of that. You take advantage of the museums, the park spaces. You want to get the kids outside, and so you can do that. And the inside space could be just somebody's basement where you get together, and parents can work it out on the basis of rotating their time. So it's possible that you could run something like that with almost no money, and you're creating that education city, that community of learners that gets outside the city walls and really gets to know its community, and then you can network all of those local learning ecosystems into a global learning ecosystem with what we have available to us today. So it's I would invite people to do that as pioneers of local learning ecosystems, and build on the idea too of human libraries, where you take stock of all of the expertise that is within your community, and then tap into that. People can sign out a person to share their expertise with them. I want to thank you both, David and Luz, for providing this. It's a discussion that I've appreciated being able to have and share my views with, but also to hear what the others are saying. And it's inspiring. What Nelson said about love, if we feel too often that we're working in a vacuum, we're all by ourselves, all alone, and we need to come together in ways that we energize each other. And you've done that here for me.
Thank you, Richard. Nelson just had to leave. He just sent me a message because we have extended already the way too far the time that we asked all of you for, but it's been because we really love to hear all the diversity of experiences and so rich as well of so many ideas. I'm sure that this is going to be very valuable for people. And yeah, two ideas stay with me with all the things that we have shared, really strong messages of love, really taking care of each other as a foundation for anything. If we build that trust, if we really, and that trust can be really the core. Ranesh was sharing about the core was open learning and this vision, but it's because he's really trusting on it and sharing this with people. And that's why he can have a gift economy running their learning space, because people trust that they really care about relationships, they care about the children, they care about this vision, and this is so powerful when we really stick to it. And that's the second message, and it's staying in the game, that resilience to keep and helping each other to stay in the game. We need love, we need taking care of, we need to share stories, we need time to rest and to disconnect, and that's okay as well. We don't need to be constantly running and pushing ourselves to the limit. We can also have a break. And we have heard different stories where when traveling, when cycling, when Nelson now is visiting different learning communities, recharging his energies, getting in different perspectives. This is really valuable and really welcome as well. So thank you all for these amazing views.
Yeah.
There's thinking about stories to share. This year has been a long one for us. We have been through lots of challenges, but this core of community, love, and caring for each other is really what help us keep going in every step. And walking this path of alternatives in education, reimagining how things could be different, I find it amazing that I can bump into I can go into anywhere where people are rethinking education and find soulmates and find an instant connection and trust. Like if there was some sort of values that cannot even be communicated, that join us, and where there's no doubt that we're on this together. So this is a unique thing that really makes me want to keep in the game.
I completely feel the same. Is that trust that kind of goes out, like from the policies we are you can feel it, and then you feel in that space and that love, and then you can breathe and everything is gonna go well. I just also adding to that, I was writing, I have a lot of notes, but I wrote, play is equal to learning, equal to life. Uncertainty and chaos is part of life. Trust and love is the glue. We need to be present, vulnerable, humble, learning every time who we are, and stay connected. So
thank you, Luz.
I think that's
that's
a perfect way to end this right there. So if I could just say a couple more things that aren't on the record, that would be great. You can edit it out.
Thank you. Then I'll close over here. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll continue Roots of Resilience next Saturday.